Have you ever heard of a highway that erases places from the map? A stretch of desert where neither GPS nor memory can agree on what's real. Truckers call it the Cursed Miles. The story comes from Eduardo Rios, a seasoned driver who has been crossing the deserts of New Mexico and Arizona for over 2 decades. But one night, he swore the road itself turned against him. It was to 47 a.m., that dead hour when the desert feels alive and watching. Eduardo was hauling a light load of car parts, but the air around him felt heavy, as if something unseen pressed down on the truck. The radio hissed with static, and the wind whispered through the window cracks like a voice trying to speak. When the fuel gauge dipped near empty, relief hit him as the GPS lit up with a blue icon, Silver Star Gas and Diner. Mile marker 342. He smiled. Perfect timing, but when he got there, the station wasn't there. Where the diner should have stood was nothing but sand and scrub. No lights, no building, not even a road sign, just a flat patch of desert. Still, the GPS insisted he was right on top of Silver Star Gas. Eduardo frowned. Maybe they shut it down, he muttered, stepping out. The night air was colder than it should have been. And that's when he noticed there wasn't a single sound. No wind, no insects, not even the cooling tick of the engine, just silence. Then, in the mirror, a flash, a red neon light, flickering far behind him. Silver Star Gas and Diner. Open 24 hours. Eduardo exhaled with nervous laughter. Guess my GPS was right after all. He turned the truck and drove toward the glow. As he approached, the world around him seemed to shift. The road looked newer, smoother, the air warmer. The gas pumps were chrome and glass, straight from the 1960s. The diner gleamed softly in amber light, a nostalgic postcard from another time. Inside stood an older woman, wiping a mug with a faded towel. "Evenin', stranger," she said kindly. "Fill it up, please." "I was starting to think I'd run dry," Eduardo said, smiling with relief. As the pump clicked on, he stepped inside. The air smelled of old coffee and rust. A jukebox played a faint country song that sounded decades old. He sat at the counter. "Coffee. And maybe a slice of that pie, apple pie," she said, smiling. Best in the desert. While he waited, his eyes drifted to the wall clock. It read 11:15. He checked his wristwatch. 3:08. "Your clock's stuck," he said, forcing a chuckle. The woman looked up. "Out here, time forgets to move forward sometimes." Her tone was gentle, but it made his skin crawl. Then he noticed the other customers. 4 of them, 3 men and a young woman, sitting at separate tables. None moved, none blinked. They stared into nothing, pale and still, like mannequins forgotten under the lights. Are they all right?" he whispered. "They're waiting," the woman said softly, setting down his pie. "Waiting for what?" "For the road to let them go." Eduardo froze. "What do you mean?" A sharp click cut through the silence. The pump had stopped. He rushed outside. The desert air hit like ice. The fuel gauge was still empty. The hose hung from the tank, dripping with dust instead of gas. Then he turned back, and his heart stopped. The road behind him was gone. The highway, the signs, the tracks, everything had vanished. In its place stretched an endless ocean of sand. "Impossible," he muttered, stumbling back into the cab. He turned the key. The radio burst alive with static. And through the noise, a voice whispered, "You stopped where no one should stop." The lights of the diner flickered violently. Inside, the still customers began to move, all at once, turning toward him. Their faces were blank, their eyes black as oil. Their mouths opened, but no words came out, only a dry, rattling hiss, like wind through empty bones. Eduardo slammed the gas. The truck roared, tires spinning in the sand. And then, suddenly, the road reappeared. Asphalt, lines, the real highway. He sped through the night without daring to look back. In the mirror, the diner's sign blinked one last time, Silver Star, open 24 hours. Then it faded into nothing. He didn't stop until sunrise. When he finally pulled into a real station, he stumbled out, pale, trembling. "Fill it up," he croaked. The attendant frowned. "Sir, your tank's already full." Eduardo blinked. The gauge needle pressed hard against full. But he knew what he'd seen, the empty tank, the pump that never worked. "You all right, man?" the attendant asked carefully. Eduardo nodded slowly, whispering, "I just drove the cursed miles." Later, when he told the story to other truckers, most laughed. But a few didn't. A few went pale, because they'd heard it too. Over the next few months, other reports came in, always the same. Drivers lost between mile markers 340 and 350 on I-40. A retro diner appearing only between midnight and 4 a.m. A kind old woman offering coffee and apple pie. And silence. Absolute silence before it appears. Those who stop say time slows down, their clocks freeze. The road disappears, and a few of them are never seen again. No record exists of any Silver Star gas and diner. Not in maps, not in archives, not in satellite images. It's as if the place never existed, or was erased by the desert itself. Yet, on lonely nights, truckers still swear they hear a faint voice over the CB radio, whispering through the static, "Silver Star, open 24 hours. So, if you ever find yourself crossing the New Mexico desert around 3 a.m., remember this: never trust a gas station that your GPS says is there, but your eyes can see. Because some places don't belong to this world anymore, and sometimes, the road takes back those who tried to find them. And if you made it this far, don't look away just yet. The road still has more secrets. Keep watching the next stories until the end of the video, because what comes next will make you afraid to even glance in your rearview mirror. It was a cold November night when truck driver Jonas Duarte, known among his fellow drivers as the Wolf of the road, received an offer he couldn't refuse. The job sounded simple: haul a load of old timber from an abandoned warehouse in Nevada to a storage yard in Illinois, driving straight across Interstate 80. Payment upfront, no questions asked, with one strange warning: don't stop anywhere, and whatever happens, never open the container. Jonas, a veteran trucker and skeptic by nature, found the warning odd but laughed it off. He'd seen it all in 25 years behind the wheel: highway accidents, spooky rest stops, even shadowy figures in the fog. Nothing scared him anymore, or so he thought. He started the trip around 2 in the morning. The wind was dry and sharp, the radio hissed with static, and the road ahead looked like it was being swallowed by the dark, lit only by his headlights cutting through the blackness. A few miles past Reno, Jonas noticed something strange. The air inside the cabin had grown heavy, almost metallic. The temperature dropped even though the heater was on full blast. Then came a faint sound, a dull thud from the trailer behind him. He glanced in the mirrors. Nothing. Probably the wood shifting, he told himself. But the thuds continued, irregular and deeper, like footsteps moving inside the container. Jonas turned up the radio to drown it out. A rock song filled the cabin for a few minutes, but when the static returned, he swore he heard a whisper behind it, a low voice murmuring his name. Jonas. He slammed his palm on the steering wheel and laughed nervously. "You're losing it, old man." By dawn, the road was wrapped in mist, the kind that seems to move with a will of its own. He hadn't passed a single car in over an hour. Then, out of the fog, a silhouette appeared, a woman standing by the side of the highway, her arm raised for a ride. Her dress was torn, her hair soaked as if she'd walked through a storm. Against his better judgment, Jonas slowed down and rolled the window open. "Ma'am, you all right?" She didn't answer, just stared at him with eyes so pale they almost glowed. Then she whispered, "You shouldn't be carrying that." A chill ran down his spine. Carrying what? But before he could blink, she was gone. Not walked away, gone. The fog swallowed her whole. Jonas slammed the gas, his heart pounding. When he glanced at the passenger seat, there was a wet handprint on the leather. He drove straight through the day, refusing to stop for gas or food. The temperature inside the cabin dropped again. He could see his own breath now. And from the trailer came another sound, this time dragging, like chains scraping metal. He grabbed his CB radio to call another trucker, but all he got was garbled static. In between the noise, a voice whispered again, "Turn back, or join us." By sunset, he reached a remote stretch of the interstate known among truckers as Dead Man S-Curve, a winding descent notorious for accidents. The fog there never lifted, even in daylight. His GPS flickered and died, and the dashboard lights dimmed one by one. Then, the trailer doors banged open. Jonas hit the brakes, the tires screeching across the asphalt. He jumped out with a flashlight, cursing whoever had rigged that faulty lock. But when the beam fell on the inside of the container, his breath froze. The wooden planks weren't just wood, they were coffin lids, stacked and sealed with rusted nails. Some of them had markings carved into the surface, names, dates, and symbols that looked like eyes and crosses intertwined. From one of the coffins came a faint tapping, then a whisper, "Please, let me out." Jonas stumbled back, terror clawing at his chest. He slammed the doors shut, locked them, and ran back to the cab. His hands shook as he turned the key, desperate to get away. But when the engine roared back to life, the passenger seat was no longer empty. The woman from the fog was sitting there, her eyes fixed on him. "You opened it," she said softly. "Now it's too late." The radio crackled violently. Voices, dozens of them, began chanting in a language Jonas didn't recognize. The fog outside thickened until he could barely see the hood of the truck. Then, one by one, the headlights along the road went dark. He felt the truck slow down on its own, as if unseen hands were gripping the wheels. He fought the steering wheel, shouting, "Let me go. What do you want from me?" The woman turned her head, her voice echoing as if spoken by many mouths. "You're delivering what's ours." The last thing Jonas remembered was the truck plunging through the guardrail and crashing into the ravine below. 3 days later, a highway patrol team found the wreckage. The cab was crushed, the trailer split open. Inside, investigators found the coffins, but they were all empty. Jonas's body was never recovered. Only his trucker's cap was found, resting neatly on the dashboard. Since then, drivers on Interstate 80 swear that on foggy nights, a lone semi-truck can be seen climbing the old highway, its headlights flickering, dragging behind it a broken trailer that creaks like wood being torn apart. Those who try to pass it say the driver sometimes waves, and if you look close enough, you'll see his face, as pale as glass, skin gray as ash, forever hauling his cursed cargo down the endless road. And if you ever find yourself driving that same stretch of highway, remember the warning Jonas ignored. Don't stop, don't look back, and never, ever open the cargo. They say that on the quietest nights along Route 66, when the asphalt seems endless and the desert stretches out like a dark ocean, a lonely figure appears on the roadside. A man in a worn-out coat, a hat hiding his face, and a suitcase in his hands. Many swear he's just a lost traveler, but the veteran truckers, they know the truth. He isn't asking for a ride, he's asking for company, on the road that separates the living from the dead. This is the story of the ghost hitchhiker of Route 66, a legend whispered among truck drivers, and one that no one has ever dared to investigate too deeply. My name is Jonas Martins. I've been a trucker for over 20 years. That night, I was driving alone, hauling a load of tires from Oklahoma to California. I knew Route 66 well, but that night, something felt different. The radio kept crackling, the GPS froze every few minutes, and the wind coming off the desert was too warm for an autumn night. It was almost to a.m. when I saw something by the side of the road, a man standing there with his thumb up. The highway was completely deserted. I could have sworn no one was there a second earlier. I slowed down, and the headlights lit up his face, pale, expressionless, like time had stopped. He raised his arm and pointed forward. as if he already knew where I was going. Heading to Barstow, I asked, opening the door. He just nodded and climbed into the cab without a word. The truck seemed to tremble when he stepped inside, and suddenly, the air turned cold. At first, I tried making small talk. Where are you coming from, buddy? No answer. What's your name? Nothing. He just stared straight ahead, eyes fixed on something far away. Something I couldn't see. That's when I noticed the smell. Gasoline and rust. Heavy. Metallic. I looked into the side mirror, and for a split second, he had no reflection. Then the radio switched on by itself. An old song began to play. Blue Moon, from 1954. I didn't have any tapes in the deck. I turned to look at him, my hands shaking. Do you believe in destiny, Jonas? He asked in a raspy, metallic voice. My blood ran cold. How do you know my name? He smiled, a twisted, lifeless grin, because I've seen this truck before. Just then, the headlights caught a road sign. Mile 313, Barstow Memorial. 13 dead in collision. 1971. A chill went through me. I knew that story. A trucker had lost control on a curve and caused a massive pileup. Everyone died, including the driver. The driver's name was Jonas Martins. I swallowed hard. The cab felt heavier, the air thicker. Then he turned his head toward me and said, "Sometimes we don't realize when we've already crossed to the other side." At that moment, the truck's engine shut off. Total silence. The only light came from the moon and the cigarette glowing between his fingers. Look ahead, Jonas, he said calmly. See that curve? I nodded, terrified. Think you can make it this time? What do you mean? I asked. Try not to miss the curve. Suddenly, the dashboard lights flickered back on. The headlights flared. The radio crackled with static. I turned my head to the passenger seat, and he was gone. Panic hit me. I slammed the brake. Nothing. The pedal was dead. The handbrake didn't work either. The truck kept speeding up on its own. Outside, shapes began to appear along the roadside. Men, women, children, just standing there, watching me. Their faces were blurred by the darkness, but I could feel their eyes. It was like the whole past of that highway was staring straight at me. The curve was getting closer and closer. The wheel was shaking in my hands. And just before I lost control, I heard his voice again, right beside me. Welcome back, Jonas. The sound of the crash echoed into nothingness. Glass shattered. Then, silence. The next morning, police found a truck overturned at mile 313 on Route 66. The driver had died instantly. But according to the papers, his name wasn't Jonas Martins. It was Rogério da Costa, a Brazilian trucker who had been driving across the U.S. for 2 years. The strangest part was the truck's radio. It was stuck on 1 a.m. frequency, playing Blue Moon on a constant loop. And on the passenger seat, they found fresh boot prints. No footprints outside the truck. No signs of another passenger. To this day, drivers say they still see the same man on that stretch of road. Dark coat, hat covering his face, suitcase in hand, always asking for a ride, always disappearing before the curve. Route 66 is long, full of stories and ghosts. But some roads don't lead to California, they lead straight to the other side. If you enjoyed this story and will never look at a lonely road the same way again, hit the like button, comment I would never pick up a hitchhiker on Route 66, and subscribe for the next story, because some tales stay alive even after death.